This is Gene Lantz on the Workers Beat. I have dragged somebody in here who's, I think, 57 years younger than I am, and I want to see what's different. What's it like? You're 22 years old, right, Ryan?
Right, correct.
So say your name and your age.
My name is Ryan Ahmadian. I'm 22 years old. I'm from Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and I'm from Dallas, Texas too, but I'm old. So what's your perception of how things have changed since I was 22? I was protesting when I was 22, but not like you guys are. And for one thing, it wasn't nearly as diverse. I mean, in my day, they were all college students, and they were all white, nearly all white. So what's going on? What kind of consciousness do you guys have now that's different?
I want to say off the top of my head the two main differences that at least allows us to gain more access. Obviously, the main thing is technology, and the access to technology allows us to speak to people on a daily basis, or communicate with them from across the world, and we can understand what they're going through and what's going on across the globe. And then another thing I want to say is the main reason why everybody is participating in this now rather than just a few people is because of the urgency. There's a sense of urgency within not just the young people but the populace right now, because there is no time to compromise on issues that are life or death within certain sectors of society, whether that's black people or women or transgender people or queer people in general, because people are dying, and it's important for us to understand what is killing them so we can change those systems that are killing them.
I'm glad you started with that, because I hadn't really thought about it. When I was 22, the American century was going on. The United States had come out of World War II having won everything, while all the other countries in the world were bombed flat. The United States, for example, had the only automobile production in the world. If anybody in the world wanted to buy a car, they had to buy it from Detroit, and that's all there was to it. And that began to change, maybe by the time I was 22, we began to see a Volkswagen or two on the street. But even then, we thought it was funny. We thought those little Volkswagen Beetles were a funny little thing, and that they really wouldn't have any effect on us. Also, I was raised in the McCarthy period. I watched McCarthy on television. It was on quite a lot. It was on the radio, and I listened to it on the radio more than I watched it on television, because we didn't have television at first. But anti-communism was like our main religion. It was the main thing that we learned. And if you really wanted to make a big laugh among young people, you would call somebody comrade, and then everybody would break up laughing, because that was horribly funny to us, because it was scary. It was scary as heck to us. Let me tell you a story, something that really began to change me. I was about 16 years old. My girlfriend had a girlfriend, and so we had to go over and pick her up for a double date. Her parents were both college professors. So I found myself talking to this college professor while we were waiting for this other girl to get ready. And she said, she asked me if I was a German, because my name is Lantz. And I said, yeah, I'm a German. And I said, there's all kinds of famous Germans, like Karl Marx. And she said, like I was just a complete idiot. This college professor, a woman with 300 hours of college or more, teaching college, turned to me and said, Karl Marx was a Russian dictator. She didn't have any idea who Karl Marx was. And that's the level of understanding that the adults had when I was 16. And it was even worse for us, because we had even less chance to find out anything and have any kind of understanding of what was really going on. The Korean War went on when I was young, and we all were 100% behind the American forces in the Korean War. The idea of an anti-war movement was just, nobody would have thought of that at all. The biggest issue was why General MacArthur was not allowed to use atomic weapons against the Chinese. And people would sit around and argue, well, he ought to use them, and because they thought that using the atomic weapons against the Chinese was the alternative to carrying out the war in Korea. So for me, when I meet younger people now and they're talking about internationalism, they're talking about demonstrations in tiny little towns and big towns all over the world, and solutions to international problems, I find it just boggles my mind. I'm so much older. I've been through so much more. You'd think I'd have learned something. But the truth is that I have to ask people much younger than I am, what the heck is going on? So I ask you, Ryan, what is going on?
Would you like me to answer that? There's a long answer to that. There's a lot going on right now, and there has been a lot going on throughout history. And I think to come back to your point, I don't think it's anybody's fault for the way that they were educated or the way that they were conditioned, especially in the time period that you guys were brought up here in America. It was a very militant, and like you said, it was very anti-communist, but not only was it anti-communist, it was racist as well. And a lot of people don't know this, but the two were kind of linked together. There was a lot of government-backed promotions about how the communists were, starting some kind of like racist meeting or something like that, so that the government could turn black people and communists against each other, so that they don't organize together to bring down the same system that's ultimately trying to fight against both of them. And there's a reason why they were fighting against both of them, and it's important for us to study the history and understand why the U.S. was anti-communist or racist or passed patriarchal laws that ultimately served to oppress women and allow the people in charge to maintain their power and gain more power.
When I was a teenager, I didn't know that the United States and the Soviet Union were on the same side in World War II. I thought that it was Hitler and Stalin that attacked the United States, and that there was that they had never had any kind of affinity for anybody that lived in the Soviet Union. I thought they were our enemies and always had been. As the Bob Dylan song goes, I learned to hate Russians all through my whole life. And he's my age. So I hate to say it, but we really didn't know very much.
And it's, like I said, you can't blame people for how they were educated, but you can hold people accountable for what they, how they choose to unlearn those things and learn new things. We all have access to the information and the education out there. Like I said, technology is becoming more and more user friendly for most people, and you have to look for that information. It's a little hard to find, but you can find it, and you have to study that history, the true history, so we can become more politically enlightened and understand what is actually going on out there.
I want to ask you one wind-up question, because in my day, we were scared to death. Children were literally watching the skies because we expected to be killed by nuclear weapons. All of the science fiction movies had something to do with aliens, which were really just Russians, somehow eating us or bombing us or burning us to death or something. So we were terrified. So let me ask just for a final question, from an old person to a young person. Do you have hope that young people are going to work things out and that we're going to have a bright future ahead?
Absolutely. I'm very optimistic in the way that people are moving forward and how they are evolving and learning new things. And also, it's not just about the young people, because because everyone is involved in this. You know, if you go to these protests, there are people of all different races, ages, genders, all different backgrounds, and providing and helping out in different ways, you know, whether they're organizing or they're participating or they're just donating, whether it's money and they can't show up, or they're donating water bottles or donating snacks. There's a million things that you can do and a million different ways you can help out, even from the comfort of your home, because we need to understand that COVID-19 is still going on. It's still a global pandemic, and our health and our safety is the most important thing, because if all of us are sick, you know, not only are we using up the resources, the very minimal resources, but we're not really impacting anything.
All right. I'm learning stuff. I hope everybody else is too. This is Gene Lantz on the Workers Beat. Let's keep learning.